Welcome everyone! In this instructional video, I'm going to teach you how to use ultrasound in the assessment of muscle. I'll teach you how to measure muscle thickness, cross-sectional area and pennation angle. Coming right up. Welcome again. My name is Stani Perkisas. I'm a geriatrician with a special interest in sarcopenia and muscle assessment. Ever since I noticed that there was a dire need for an easy instrument to assess muscle bedside in patients, I started the SARCUS group, which stands for Sarcopenia and Ultrasound. In this video, I'll teach you how easy it is to use ultrasound in the assessment of muscle. It's an easy technique that you'll master in no time. Let's get started. So, what do we need? A bed, an ultrasound machine, and of course, a patient. I'll be applying the guidelines of the SARCUS group that were published in European Geriatric Medicine. A link for this article is available in the description below. Be sure to read it. Through these guidelines, you'll learn how to use the correct patient positioning and anatomical landmarks. All necessary items that should be written down in your protocol are mentioned, as is everything that should be measured. Using this information, your work will be up to date and can be compared internationally. That is the purpose of SARCUS. How to position your patient? Well, it all depends on which muscle you want to assess. For this video, I'll be assessing the rectus femoris muscle. If you're interested in other muscles, keep watching this video for the principles and be sure to check out the SARCUS article. As I said, link in the description below. If the muscle of your interest isn't described, please leave a comment, then we'll look into it. Physical exercise before assessment influences results. Therefore, keep your patient from doing physical exercises at least 30 minutes prior to investigation. Be sure to assess the muscle in a relaxed state. You don't have to give your patient a massage or a mindfulness session, but just ask to avoid contracting muscles during the assessment. This can influence results. I'll give you an example. Here you can see a cross-sectional or transverse view of the biceps muscle. It starts in a relaxed state and then starts contracting. You can clearly see the change in cross-sectional area and muscle thickness. If you want to assess the rectus femoris, put your patient in a supine position. A pillow for comfort is allowed. The proposed landmarks for the rectus femoris are the greater trochanter as the proximal point and the superior pole of the patella as the distal point. Then use a measuring tape to measure the distance between the two landmarks and take 50% of this length. At this point, you can perform all measurements. Be sure to mark this point for future references. Three tips about the probe. 1. Be sure to use enough of ultrasound gel. You don't have to overdo it, but certainly don't use too little. 2. Handle your probe very gently. Don't use too much force. As a matter of fact, don't use any force at all. Just hold it steady and let gravity do its work. Here you can see the rectus femoris in the longitudinal plane. Dependent upon the pressure you administer, the results will change, so keep the pressure on the probe to an absolute minimum. 3. Hold your probe perpendicular to the skin. Inclination of the probe gives way to measuring errors. So, now that all preparations are done, we can start doing the actual measurements. It is advised to do all measurements 3 times and then take the mean value. We'll start with muscle thickness. Muscle thickness can be measured both in the longitudinal as in the transverse plane, but we advise the latter. In the transverse plane, it is much more easy to standardize your measurement because there you can take the middle part of the muscle. Also, don't forget to mark this point on the skin for future reference. In this example, you can see a transverse view of the rectus femoris. Here, it is highlighted in orange. The middle part of the ultrasound probe is now aligned with the middle part of the muscle. As you have kept the probe on the 50% leg mark, as indicated by the black arrow, you can now mark the middle of the muscle, as indicated by the yellow arrow and highlighted by the red line. This marking will be important when measuring pennation angle later on. When taking the muscle thickness, remember to take a line perpendicular from the upper and lower boundaries of the muscle, not perpendicular to the skin. I'll show you an example. Here you can see again the transverse view of the rectus femoris. The first impulse would be to take the visually largest distance, as is indicated by the orange line. The alternative could be to always use the middle part of the muscle, measuring perpendicular to the skin. Again, in this example, indicated by the orange line. However, both methods give way to a large variability in measuring. The most standardizable method is using the middle point of the muscle and measuring as perpendicular as possible on the upper and lower border of the muscle itself. In this transverse plane, you can also measure cross-sectional area. You just have to delineate your muscle. I will show you in this example. In this example, try to follow the tracer. Its starting point is within the circle and highlighted by the arrow. You can see that I am manually delineating the muscle. When you have completed this task, which can take some practice to do neatly, the computer will automatically calculate the cross-sectional area. Remember, best to do all measurements 3 times, ideally after taking a new cross-sectional freeze image of the muscle. This way, small alterations in measuring will be leveled out. When you are finished, you will get a nice freeze image of the cross-sectional area of the muscle. The pennation angle is the angle between the muscle fascicles and the tendon axis. It is easy to measure. Just turn your probe back so you can see the rectus femoris in the longitudinal plane. Be sure to measure the pennation angle using the lower aponeurosis of the muscle. I'll give you an example of how it should look. In order to measure the pennation angle, first locate the lower aponeurosis of the muscle. Then, search until you find a good view of the muscle fascicles. Remember to keep your probe both on the 50% mark as on the middle part of the muscle as indicated earlier. After that, you can let the ultrasound machine calculate the pennation angle, which is often described with the Greek theta symbol. After watching this video, you are now able to measure muscle thickness, cross-sectional area, and pennation angle. You could see that these measurements do not take a lot of time and are very easy to perform. Everybody can do them. In fact, it is so easy, my patient could do all measurements on their own after only 10 minutes. If you learned something from this video or simply enjoyed watching it, please feel free to like. If you still have questions or have comments regarding ultrasonographic assessment of muscle after watching this video or reading the SARCUS article, please feel free to leave your questions and comments in the section below. So, to conclude, thank you for watching this video, and don't forget, it's as easy as it looks, so start assessing those muscles.